Many players really wonder about what they should do versus the first d4 when it comes to an active opening that can give them opportunities and possibilities to fight for advantage or oppose against the opponent in a more aggressive way. And it's really not easy because, you see, the first d4 is a solid positional play. And if you're white, you can always choose between different lines that can give you the chance to play differently. But when you're black, you've got a little bit of a problem with the way how you can, set your own piece and do things. So it's like the thing is that after d4, knight of 6, c4, c5, I mean that's basically the way to go. When white plays the move d5, the move of b5 is the Benko Volga Gambit. It's a really interesting system in which the main plan by black is to quickly open up the position and attack possibly versus white center. And it's really nice because, I mean, you can see it for yourself. It's like after the move of b5, white has to choose exactly how to play. And actually, you can choose between taking the pawn, between not taking the pawn, between actually protecting the pawn. And, there are different ways on how you could play these. So you need to have a good preparation versus each and every one of these lines. Now, what are the possibilities, essentially? Let's talk about the possibilities that he can choose between. One of the most, let's call it this way, common opportunities is that white will take or play knight f3. Knight f3 is a nice line, although I don't believe that he can do much with it. What you can do as black here is to, well, actually you can choose between playing e6 to counterattack his center, or do even a move like g6. e6 could be fine, because should white play the move like bishop to g5, e6 to the d, c6 to the d, d6, you get into a position which is known as the Blumenfeld Gambit decline, and that's very much like the Benko, with some real improvements to black's position and nice possibilities. For example, should white go e4, then you can just do a6, and you gained a huge space on the queen side area. It's almost like the Benoni, but in a much stronger and faster way. Should white do bishop d3, we've got bishop e7. And now we realize that white has to move the bishop down the road, because if it doesn't, then there is knight takes d5, and there is a hidden g5, so the knight will take back eventually. So white will have to move his own bishop right down there, so to bring it to the f4. And that's just what we need, because in case he plays it that way, we can play for a bishop to the g4, and that's pretty much about it. The position of black gets very comfortable. It's easy to set the pieces around and bring them forward from this point of perspective. We get knight d7 too, which is excellent, as it sets the knight right around the center. And so when white does something like h3, the bishop can simply retreat down to the h5 square. It's a good way to go, because e5 is even available, just in case when we need it. It's a good way to go. White can castle, and then just in this position, I think we will get the development going with short castles. So rook e1, and then there could be rook e8. I wouldn't say that there is anything too special about this. I would say it's more about what black has as opportunities that are allowed to him. I mean, the next moves are definitely going to be bishop f8 and most probably knight e5, but I think the piece coordination is really significant right here. You can continue also with c5, the c4, and then knight c5, which is a great way to go, as you'll be able to add quite a sufficient pressure and tension right against white center on the e4. So it may take a moment or two, but I think that it's certainly worth it. And the position here is pretty good for black. So, speaking about that, I don't believe that moving with bishop to g5 here is the best. And d takes d, f takes d is also not going to give white as much, because, okay, now this is a gambit line. This is the Blumenfeld original. But I love it because it really provides a lot of very significant opportunities to black's side. I mean, you can see it for yourself. First of all, there is this brilliant opportunity for us to attack to control the center. There's very little that white can do with his own current pieces on the side. And if white plays, say, e3, bishop to the d6, knight c3, castles, then maybe bishop e2 and bishop b7, not only that most of black's pieces are going to be very well developed and purposefully coordinated, But what you also realize is that it will just take a little bit before he can get more. You get Queen e7, Rook d8, e5, e4. There were games, I mean specifically Alekhine played that as black, and it's a really, really good formation to play. It's called the Blumenfeld Gambit, and it's very powerful. So if somebody plays knight f3 against you or anything like that, then this is what you could do. Now, what other options does white have? I mean, one of them is knight to d2, planning to defend the pawn naturally. The b takes to c. Now, often white does not take this pawn because it doesn't make sense. I mean, we can either attack on his knight or just do bishop b7. And he has problems with his center, more specifically with that pawn, making him to play passive moves like this. And now we're going to get into the previous position without having the pawn sacrifice, which is great. So I don't think you can do that. Knight d2 is mainly connected to plan for e4, and the idea is to get the capture on c4 with the bishop. Now there are of course different possibilities for black. Now you can choose between different moves. c3 is a very interesting possibility, and after b takes to c, g6. Now that's very nice because you actually get into a sort of King's Indian type of position in which the b file is quite open, and that's very nice for black because this b file is often used to help his counterplay on the queen side go very quickly after the most of the development is already made. There is an even e5 move which can completely lock up. Obviously an exchange is not so good because black is going to get the c6 available square in d4. So if white castles, there could be knight h5, and I mean you can decide wherever you want to attack. You can choose to attack on the king side with moves like knight f4, or you can just in f5, or you can choose to play something different. I mean, okay, it will take a little bit of time until we decide exactly what white is going to do and where are we ultimately going to go for. But trust me, this is a very important position, and having a block's possibilities and on support and activity, it definitely makes a lot of sense. So going on from this perspective, I think black has a lot to show in this position, in a given position, and that's why I think it could be certainly considered as really decent and straightforward. What are the white own opportunities? Well, they're not really that many. They're a bit minimal. Let's think about other ways how white can try to use this variation. I mean, besides that knight to d2 line that he can choose, one other opportunity for white could be the actual move of, we're talking about queen c2. Now, some people play that because after b takes to the c, white can still do e4 and get into a fine position without allowing black to push c3. In this case, I believe that the original order with d6 and g6 should do the job. Yes, we haven't sacrificed the pawn, but we still have some very good opportunities going on the queen side. For example, bishop g7, white can castle short, we can castle short too, h3 is a move, and now there is knight bd7 that really does a good job. Now the b line is already kind of open, and here is a way how the game can continue further should white play knight c3. Well, in case of this move, knight b6 I believe is very good. He has to move the bishop, and now there is a typical maneuver that you can remember in quite a few of the Benko Gambit type of structures. The knight retreats down to e8, but it doesn't do it because, it doesn't have anywhere to go. But the real purpose behind this move is in order to set that knight a little bit differently. Like bring it to c7 and therefore get it a bit closer to that side of the board where we actually want to have more activity. Going on with the move of a5, furthermore, in fact, explains that the knight is actually going to go through a6 at a certain point later. And it will become even more powerful out there because black's pieces are very decent. There's going to be the move a4, which actually shows itself pretty effective. And I have to admit that there isn't so much that white can do in the position. I mean, there's knight bishop a6, exchange of the bishops, knight takes 8, knight to b4. In case white plays a3, there is a typical idea even. You can play the move of f5, which is really interesting. e5 is not so good because then there will be no protection to his d5 pawn in the center. And if he doesn't do it, then we have the chance to still exchange an e4 and yet leave him with very little of protection and defending around that side. See, so White's task, I have to say, is not that easy at all. I mean, I would say that it's actually pretty difficult and quite challenging after all. Of course, he's got some possibilities like e5 available, but then we could have this really nice going bishop to b7 with this shot to attack the d5 quickly. There's this, there's the opportunity to create some extra pressure against White's formation. His rooks and the queen and the other pieces are not that good at all, when this happens. So I have to admit that overall speaking, the black activity and the reasonable opportunities he can get with it, they're amazing. They're really, really good. So what are White's own chances up here? Very little. That's why most people do not, choose these moves to play. And oh yes, okay, there's the line of bishop g5 that White can do on his own, but there's knight e4, so such kind of moves just don't help. Queen a5 check. Now there's even g5 that you can go for. So bishop e5, f6, and I mean we can just see how White's position fails. Finally, there is one more line that White can play. I mean the one last line that we can talk about is what happens in case White goes a4. Now this continuation forces Black to instantly capture out there in the c4, and it leads to this position. So what's this really about? Well, see, although there are no tactical possibilities or anything like this coming out of the variation, it's kind of tricky, and you have to be precise about it. My suggestion is that you just do d6, and whenever you see something new or something that you don't quite recognize or you don't find very familiar in these type of positions, just keep it safe, secure, and stable. That's about it. If you do it these three, so safe, secure, and stable, there will be nothing for you to worry about. Okay, now White's opportunity is definitely going for the e4. So this move is going to help him to kind of get the chance and open space. But you can just do g6 yourself, and this is exactly what we need. Like after the move of g6, there is bishop to g7 coming up next. It will take just a moment or two for most of Black's pieces to get out on the positions that they want, and that's why I think it's so great. I won't say it is amazing, but it's a really decent development, and I love it. What are White's own opportunities? Well, actually, you can capture in c4 with the bishop, but then this can just allow Black to play bishop g7, knight f3, and then there is a castling. White's going to castle 2. Now we can have bishop a6. I don't think that this way of developing is really going to lose White's game immediately, but I'm really liking the type of development that Black is going to get. So what we realize is that now should White turn out to play with, let's imagine maybe bishop takes to a6, there is knight takes to a6, rook to b8 is a good opportunity, and really White didn't change much by actually locking up the a files. I mean, it's very straightforward up here. Okay, what are White's own possibilities at this point of the game? Well, maybe he can do queen e2 in order to keep up some tension, but then we can just do knight b4. Bishop g5 is an opportunity, and then Black is going to do rook to e8, which is perfect. So it takes a little, obviously, it takes a little bit to develop and get the activities, but I think it's worth it. And then what we realize is that if White plays with the move of rook to d1, then we can find out there is queen c7, and now there could be this opportunity of playing with e6 in the next moves. So Black can just decide where to go. We can just attack through the e file, or we can attack through the b line. It's really about where you want to go, and really there is very little that White can do in this position. So it's pretty much about the choice that we take, and it's a really good choice. There isn't at all something that White can choose between. So it is, I think it's amazing. It's mostly because of the freedom that is given to Black and the easy way of how these pieces can come through. Okay, what if White plays now knight d2? Well, there's knight d7. You remember that little kind of a move out there, so it can bring over the knight closer to the queen side. It's really about just being able to use our pieces a little more toward the queen side, and I think this is great. It's very difficult for him to do something there out there. Okay, what are the options to follow? I mean, okay, maybe one of the ideas could be to play for f4, but you know, I don't really think it's gonna be just as good. I mean, black can do knight c2 in this position, knight d4. I'm just showing different ways on how it can develop, but I'm really liking the kind of possibilities of black a whole lot. So this is great. All right, that sounds like a very nice opportunity to follow. And okay, of course, let's stop talking about that line, about these deviations, as we just see they're not working as great, they're not being as good, they can't help white that much. Now, what happens in case he takes the pawn, just by doing c takes to the b? Now, this is the more interesting question. What do we do when he has the guts to take the pawn? Now, obviously, that's the major Volga Benko Gambit. What we need to do is to give away the a pawn too, because, you know, since we're not going to sacrifice another pawn, it's a really favorable thing to exchange. Mostly because, you know, doing an exchange right here is helping. How does it help? Well, it's actually pretty helpful, because in case of the change and the recapture that we can make, it's actually going to help us to get the ability to develop our own bishop. We're going to have the ability to move our queen up and then, you know, gain some attacking opportunities. So after b takes to a, okay, then you can play bishop takes a. Now, of course, white doesn't want to push the e pawn because you're going to exchange on f1 and stop his king side castle. So knight c3, g6, knight f3, d6. And now usually white plays g3. I mean, e4 is also a possibility. If anybody plays that against you, you can just know that to respond with bishop takes f1. And that's really not a great development for white, because after king takes f1, bishop to g7, and g3, and then let's say short castles, I mean, this is not a position I'd love to play with white, as you can see for yourself. Knight bd7 is coming, queen to b6 is the next move, rook to b8 is the follow-up. And without his bishop and quite a few of the other pieces that he actually needs to go, it's just bad. I mean, I don't want to say that it's horrible, it's you know, but it's certainly troublesome and pretty difficult to play with. So this is why we say that actually white may have a little bit of an issue if he really goes to play like this. And what essentially different he can choose to do in this position? I mean, is there anything different that he can go for? Yes, the good thing is that there is, you know, like, actually, I believe that you need to be prepared against a few more lines, and knowing about them should help you to keep up safe. Okay, so what happens in case white tries something of the kind like this move? What do we do in that particular occasion? See, that's very tricky, because this move of g3 is not letting you to get away from his light square bishop. So it actually provides him with the opportunity to set that bishop right in the g2 and really prepare himself for being able to castle. That's a good way to go. Now, what I recommend you to do is to play with knight bd7. Instead of when white castles short, you castle short too, and after rook b1. Now our plan is to start concentrating as many pieces as we could right down the queen side. Now remember that, since your plan is all about being like the possibility to counterattack and do more out there, you really want to focus your idea at the opportunity to attack him. So that's very, very important. What are the white options to fight against it? Well, one of his main moves to follow is going to be bishop to the d2 in this moment. And after bishop to d2, you can play for a rook f to b8 in this moment. Queen c2, and then knight to g4. See, this little maneuver of knight g4 helps us not only to open the bishop, but get that king side knight really down to the queen side, because that's what we want. We actually want to have the opportunity to follow with the move of knight e5, and then you can continue with a move like knight to c4. This is really terrific, because if that knight can really arrive at the c4 square and he gets ready to add some extra pressure right down this point, you know, inside his position, it will be very difficult for him to do anything good. So what are the different prospects eventually going on out there? You know, there aren't many, I have to admit that. There are not too many, because although the black pieces and the possibilities are very concentrated, white is quite passive, and he can't easily counterattack this. For instance, one of the moves is a4, and now why is a4? Let me clarify. If he does rook after d1, there could be knight g5, knight x3, knight x3. So he can play without a4, but the trouble then is that this a2 becomes always sort of a consistent weakness. And when we do this, let's say he covers the g4, we can have many moves like, in this case, pawn to c4 even, b takes to c, knight takes to c4. And see, a2 becomes like sort of a regular weakness that we can attack on. And even after a potential exchange that we can make on the c3, a2 is still going to remain pretty big and pretty bad and pretty weak as a pawn. So from that point of perspective, we really care about the opportunity to, white really cares about the opportunity to get that pawn away, so that it doesn't get into a bad target just like that. Because if it gets a bit of a target, then things aren't really going well that well after all. So what are the things that he could sort of try? I mean, what possibilities are available there? Going back to the beginning, just a little bit backward to the position. Go back. Yes. Okay, after queen a5, of course, bishop d2 is the one move, is the only, not the only move. There is also queen c2. So essentially, after that move, white can play without bishop to the d2. This, nevertheless, is not just as good, because, you know, if he plays it like this, it's like, it feels a bit not too great, and we can understand or realize that after he plays up with this, then just we can continue with the move of knight g4 at that moment, and it's very much the same. There is no, there isn't there are not many things coming out from his side, while actually on the other side, we are really getting ready to push up the knight and follow our major plan. Bishop g5 can be met by, okay, now, it may sound really weird, but I'm actually going to suggest to play queen d8. And that's not because I'm afraid that any other lines will be bad, but it's just that I think that queen to d8 is perfectly safe and secure to play right now. There isn't really anything to worry about that move. It's a good move, and it helps us to get ready to get rid of his bishop with something of the h3 or anything similar of the kind. It's nice to follow this position, I can guarantee you. It's really nice. There isn't anything for you to worry about this. You just get what you need out of the opening. All right, now of course there are some other plans that white can continue. I mean, let's imagine that in this position he'll try h3. Yes, but then you can just go for knight ge5. If he takes, then you can simply recapture with your knight out there. You can do that knight c4. So there is no immediate compensation up here for the sacrifice, but you're really getting a strong and comfortable activity. An easy way to set your pieces are all around, and yes, definitely, it's worth trying. You just need to study some typical games in it and just see how it goes. I mean, if you get to like it, if you get to have good results, you can certainly use it in tournament games. But before you really try it in any serious events or serious games, try to play it a bit online or on some sparring games. Now, of course, after e6, white isn't really forced to take that pawn. I mean, many people are just going to do it at e3 or b6. e3 may happen as a way for white to just wait on you to take first. And that's something that I'll not recommend you to do. But it's better to just develop like that. If he exchanges, we already have that line. We can exchange a light square bishop and make his life more difficult, because the light squares are not really so good for him. So we can do it that way. If, after all, I mean, if after castles, white plays with a4, that is the other line, then the plan is just to do d6. And should he go for something of the e4, or actually he could try e4 even right away, but then the knight is not still there, you see. So it's actually, I think that he has to delay it. Let's say if he tries something of the bishop e2 instead, then we can do a takes to the b, bishop takes to b, and then bishop a6 again. So really, the change in order doesn't make major changes into the position. After the trade, we still follow it knight a6, rook e1, knight b4, e4, knight d7 most probably, and we're just about to play, or actually we can even do c4 in this case, which looks pretty good, as you can have the d3 square available for your knight at that point. So one of the most common lines that I've actually heard people try after a6 is the move of b6, and I guess people try that one because they want to just give away the pawn. I don't know, keep some more files closed around that side, and just keep it okay. See, so that's happening sometimes. Now, what do we do after that with sort of a continuation? What's the best way to go? See, that's a really tricky question because, I mean, there are a few possibilities by black, and none of them are really straightforward and easy. But, I mean, after b6, I would recommend you to take the pawn. We can even do it, he can even do it before this. Usually white plays it earlier at b6 at this point. And when that continuation actually gets to happen, it's very relevant that you simply take the pawn back. You just play queen takes to b6, but not now. You do d6. See, the tricky thing is that if you take with the queen, you do a4 and provoke it to make the less favorable a5 or something. So you have to know exactly which point to take it. Now, do you take the pawn right here? Well, I think that you certainly can do it. At this moment, there's this move. Or you can even play with knight bd7. Both lines are possible. If you want a little more flexible structure, you can do it this way. The plan of development is really straightforward. So when white plays a4, a5, bishop b5, you can castle. And when white gets the castle, you can take the pawn with your knight. The truth is that when you cuts off the bishop g4 opportunity, you can simply set your own bishop up to the b7 square, which is okay. And later on, that will be a good preparation for an upcoming knight e8 and potentially rook b8. So rook d1, knight c7. It's really all about just bringing as many pieces as you can toward the queen side, and he can't hold you there. The problem is that he's always weaker on that side of the board than you are. So if he tries to hold you, that's funny because I mean he's really bad there, and trying to hold you, being much stronger and more effective, is really like trying to do something that doesn't seem easy. I don't know if this could work or anything, but I guess that's perfect for black. What other opportunities exist out there? I mean, okay, let's going back to the beginning. Back. You can also consider capturing the pawn with your queen. I mean, if you don't want knight to d7. It is that knight d7, in my opinion, is a little more effective to work. Taking with the queen should also guarantee you a decent position. Knight f3, bishop g7. Say knight d2, castles. Usually white plays bishop e2. Knight bd7, knight c4 here. Bishop a4. And that's just a little more passive. Now, I guess you're going to say, okay, well, Valeri, I don't want more passive, so let me just play the more active one, which I would understand. I mean, most people do not like to play more passively like this, and that's totally all right, you don't have to play passive. But I'm just saying that, there are a few different ways between you can choose, and now, for instance, after knight b6, should white get to really trade off, we can have that really decent queen takes to b6 to follow. We got bishop d7, we got rook to b8, we got this space opportunities and a real sufficient way of keeping up the plans. So it wouldn't take as much, really, to get what we need. And that's a really sufficient way for a counterplay on that other area. So I love that. I think this is going to be good. It's easy, straightforward, and it's fine. Queen to c2. I guess you can do bishop g4 at that point. Should he exchange? There's knight takes g4. I mean, the overall idea that you can remember from the Volga Gambit is simply to follow a good coordination between your pieces and a nice possibility of keeping up towards the queen side. Now, if you're consistent with it and you simply pay attention to what white tries to do as a counterplay or what sorts of continuations is he preparing in order to counter you on an opposite area, you'd be really good because he's often not able to do as much out there. So just this preparation, setting up the pieces, grouping them on the queen side, and starting to launch some activity there, that should be all right. So keep me posted and let me know if there is any question that you are having about this system or anything that I could be of assistance. Certainly you need more experience with it, so I'll be glad to help you anytime.